Welcome to this week's Today's Health and Wellness Podcast. This is Brett. The Today's Health and Wellness Podcast is a joint effort of the Central Ohio Health and Wellness Magazine and Today's Health. In each week's podcast, we spotlight health and wellness stories you'll find in the magazine, on Today's Health web pages, on our social media, as well as extras you'll only hear in the weekly podcasts. Thanks for subscribing and hitting the play button. Let's get started right after this. In cold weather and then in the extreme hot weather, we tend to be inside more, and indoor air quality is important and different for every season. I talked with Ryan Bolin, the Basement Doctor's indoor air quality expert, about what to look for and how indoor air quality can affect our health. You work here at Basement Doctor doing a wide variety of different things, and the Basement Doctor also offers that as well too. But we wanted to talk about a little bit about indoor air quality. We spend a lot of our lives inside, and sometimes we don't realize what kind of air we're living in. Let's talk about how you address that with the Basement Doctor, what you've seen, what as a homeowner you should take a look at.
When you talk about indoor air quality as a whole, you're looking at the environment inside your house, inside the closed envelope of your house. It's affected by many things. The outside air, of course, is going to be the biggest impact. So seasons have a big impact on your indoor air quality. Older homes are less tight, meaning they're not as well insulated. They don't have Tyvek wrap on and things like that, so they share a lot more outside air with inside. So sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes that's a bad thing. The two groups of people that are most concerned with the indoor air quality are the infants and the elderly, because they either have a declining immune system or they're building one, right? The rest of us that are considered healthy, that's what we were talking about, is healthy. We're exposed to these things in a small concentration throughout the day, throughout our lives. We're in different buildings, especially us being in and out of different folks' home on a daily basis. So we have a better guard against those things. But, indoor air quality is not only mold and mildew, but it's also carbon monoxide and things that are generated by our furnaces, our hot water tanks, building materials. Some building materials off gas. That's why when we install anything in someone's home, it's part of our drumbeat to create a healthier environment inside someone's home. So we watch things like dust control, water control, humidity control is huge. Indoor air quality and the relative humidity inside is one of the biggest factors. So all of those things, you have to take a step back and look at the house as a whole, right, and try to find reasons why it could be affected in an adverse situation.
Are there any obvious telltale signs that your home is sick on how you're affected as well?
Absolutely. What I talk to a lot of people about this because we get a lot of phone calls about this. Your body tells you if something's wrong. If you go to work and you feel fine every day and your energy's high and you're not stuffy and you feel great, and then all of a sudden you go home and 20 minutes later you start to feel different, right? And it's not always the big dramatic changes, right? It's the subtle things, like if your energy level drops, if your nose starts to stuff up, or your eyes get itchy, or you cough. Coughing is a common reaction. That's a sign that something's going on that you should start looking into, because your house, the sick building syndrome term has been around for a long time, but it's very true. Your house and what you're breathing and living in can make you feel that way in a very short period of time. Reaction time is very short. You can start feeling the difference within 15, 20 minutes.
What's a typical call when you go into the home? What can that homeowner expect when you walk in the door? What's going to be the process?
The first thing that we do, even taking a little step behind that, and from when they call, the girls and guys in the call center try to gather as much information about what's happening. What are you experiencing? Because a lot of people don't know. So when they're calling us, they're looking for advice. So they don't know this is happening to me because of X, Y, or Z. They say, look, something's wrong. We're calling you because you guys are the experts. Tell me what I'm feeling. That's where we start. So I try to get as much information from them. And the first question is, do you feel fine when you're out of this house for more than 15 or 20 minutes? Do all of a sudden is it a light switch goes on and your energy level goes up and you feel way better? So once we get those questions answered and we kind of have an idea of what's going on, then we decide which steps to take, which direction to go to try to find a point source or something that's going wrong in the house.
And as you mentioned before, it could be seasonal as well, too. It could be a difference between winter and summer.
Right. The winter time, when the humidity levels are typically down, we can still have humidity in the wintertime. The temperatures are down. It's not a growth season. It's gray, it's cold, as opposed to like right now when it's beautiful and sunny and we've had rain and everything's growing and it's green. Well, the things you can't see growing out there right now are the mold spores and the seasonal things. Ragweed season is here, so those things flourish right now. And so the wintertime we see a little bit less, but people are spending more time indoors, so they are feeling it more because they're not outside playing frisbee or walking the dog or doing the things that they do on a daily basis. So we get a lot of indoor air quality calls in the winter because people are in their basement and they're starting to feel those things a little worse.
Right, exactly. With what you do to help the sick home, a combination of both some filtering and probably humidity control as well then.
Right. So if someone thinks or they have the perception that they're reacting to their home, whether it be a mold or a mildew situation as an example, a lot of the times we start out with a battery of air samples. And now, just like I said before, the wintertime is unique because we don't have a whole lot growing outside. So we have to watch the environment to make sure we're not taking samples that are going to be false positives, right? But you compare your indoor air to your outside air. So when we take an air sample, we're looking at what's my inside basement air compared to air that's outside my front porch. So we take a analysis from a laboratory that's independent, and we look at that. So not only do we look for spore counts, how many of this organism's inside versus outside, but more importantly, we look at species. So if someone's having a mold problem that's a potential pathogen, is what the reactive molds are called, we say, okay, do you have these organisms in the house? And if you do, why are they there? And you brought up humidity control. The majority of the problems in a home are because people might not understand that in a below-grade space, your air conditioner or your furnace, these things don't really do a whole lot for your basement. So it's its own environment. So humidity can get trapped down there, and it has nowhere to go. So that's when we start the humidity control, because if it's above 60% for 48 hours plus, then you can have what's called a bloom, where there's enough water in the air to germinate spores, and they can grow, right? So things can grow from a problem you didn't know you had a problem, right? So you don't have active water leaks, you don't have all these things going on that are really popping out to you, but you have high humidity, and that's where your source is. So we always look at humidity first. We always look for active water leaks. And then things like cardboard that shouldn't be in a crawl space. All these molds and mildews like the cellulose building materials. So if I look in a crawl space and I see 500 cardboard boxes sitting on top of a gravel floor, so we start the removal process. And sometimes it's recommendations. Sometimes we encapsulate the crawl space to isolate that from the earth and make it part of the house space. And sometimes it's just a dehumidifier. And then the majority of time it's a combination of things that we're doing to improve upon what's going on.
Let's, if you can, maybe simplify a real quick checklist that if somebody calling in, they know they've got some problems in the home. Your comments about, yeah, I'm feeling it 15 minutes after I come home, and I know it's not just because I'm coming home tired from work. What would be 4 or 5, 6 good questions that they should have answered prior to making a phone call to you, going, yeah, I know this is happening, and kind of answering the questions that you're going to ask as well. Be prepared.
Right. Things like, hey, do you have any visible growth on your basement items? Meaning, when you do have humidity troubles, you'll get a fuzz, and I think everyone has seen it. That little white fuzz when you go down the basement and it's on the back of your office chair or the side of a couch, right? So is there anything visibly that you see? Next is everyone in the house feeling the same way? Because again, the reason regulations on the mold and mildew industry are tough is because we each have our own individual immune system. So what affects me may not affect you. So if there's multiple people in the house, that we always get that information too. So is it a one person thing? Is it multiples? Is the house clean? That's a tough one to ask people sometimes. But it's very, very important. Because a lot of the problem solving is physical removal. So if you're not such a clean person, you can make things a little worse, right? And then that's touchy, right? So you have to be diplomatic about it and use the right words. But it's always a series of questions like you asked. Do you have visibles? Are there any water leaks that you're aware of from the outside or from above? Kitchen sink, is it leaking? A bathroom, is it leaking? And then, and always the big one, do you feel better when you're out of the house, right? I try to reserve the questions like we're talking about for myself or one of my guys. I don't want to put that burden on the folks that are taking the call because, they're a little personal. So that's 5 or 6 questions that everyone needs to have ready when they call.
So good advice would be just kind of take a tour around the house and take a look around before you make a call.
Inside and out, no matter the season, because you can't see everything from just inside. A lot of the times when we're looking on, when we do an exterior inspection, we'll see a line of sight into the basement that you might not see looking up because you're at a different elevation. So you can also see a lot. You can tell a lot by the ground around the house and how things are laying. And a lot of the time that's caused too. If there's a negative grade, then there's water pooling against the house, and that's the water source. And you'd be surprised how many people do not look at their house. They've lived there 30 years, and they do not walk around their house once a month.
Guilty.
Yeah, and it's funny. My wife tells me all the time, I spend a lot of time with other folks, and I look at the side of my house, and there's a hole there, right? And she's like, you know better. I had a battery backup sitting on my floor for 3 months before I hooked it up. So we're all guilty of that. If we all spent our time doing everything that's recommended health-wise and for our house, we wouldn't have time to go to work.
You'd be out of business.
Yeah, that's right. That's right, and we'd be stuck. So again, we serve as the eyes and ears for people a lot, and again, that's the personal aspect of what we do. People trust us to go in their home and be honest with them, right, about what's going on, and honest about a solution that's going to take care of it, and nothing extra. Look, everyone has seen all over TV and the internet about these miracle things that this spray is going to fix that, or this filter is going to fix everything. A good rule with all of this is if it sounds too good to be true, then it most certainly is. There is no one spray, or there is no one thing that fixes it all. And everybody wants that. It's the sizzle, and look, we wish we had it too, but it's an ongoing process. Indoor air quality is a maintenance thing. You can't just put a dehumidifier in the basement and expect it to take care of everything. You have to make sure that the equipment's in good shape, and that's why we provide annual maintenance on these things. So you have to make sure you're taking care of the things that are taking care of your house. So.
Thank you for taking some time to talk about this. I some really good information, and want to make sure that our listeners got this, as well as just be prepared to when they make you call, you're set for them as well.
Absolutely, and if people don't know, it's okay. The answer to a question when we say, "Are you experiencing this?" or if they don't know, it's okay. We'll figure it out. And that's what our job is to help people figure out what's going on, identify, remove, and provide a solution that's going to be lasting. So things that they can live in their home and be comfortable and not have to worry. We all have enough worry out there every day with work and life, and you want to be comfortable in your home and not have to worry about how you're feeling when you're there.
Thanks again for listening to this week's Today's Health and Wellness podcast, brought to you by Central Ohio Health and Wellness Magazine and Today's Health. If you have a health and wellness segment you would like us to cover, send us an email. Our contact information is in the show notes.
And if you'd like more information about sponsoring our podcast, like Ashley just mentioned, our contact information is in the podcast notes. We look forward to hearing from you.
Circle270media.com.